We're halfway through September. We just had a Friday the 13th. Fall is approaching, which means Halloween season is upon us. So I figured we would do a slasher tier list. Now, some of these I'm not going to be familiar with, or I'm so loosely familiar with them that I'm just not going to rank them. Like this, I don't know who this is. You're going in unfamiliar. Now this looks familiar, but I'm not sure either. This woman, I can't place it. Though that's Saw, the woman from Saw, Amanda, I believe. She kind of takes over for Jigsaw. She was pretty cool. Like, it's interesting that she was in the game and then took over for Jigsaw. That was actually really cool. I think that worked really, really well. Now, I haven't seen all 10 Saw films because I'm actually a sane person, believe it or not. So, I haven't watched all 10. Maybe one day I will, but I really feel like the franchise ran its course with the third one. I think I saw like maybe 6 of them total, maybe the first 6, but then it's like, what are we doing here? Angela, I believe her name is, from Sleepaway Camp. I gotta put her in B tier. I'm thinking maybe C. Actually, yeah, I'll put her in C. Solid movie. Really, just a solid, like, low budget kind of slasher film that goes. I would say it actually is appropriately appreciated. I really like the guy. He's like the cook for the camp, and he's got this big pot of boiling water or whatever. There's some okay scares, but just very like slow paced, kind of uninteresting. It's rough. Like, I feel very judgmental in judging the film so harshly, but I feel like it really struggles with some pacing, and I'm somebody who specifically enjoys camp movies, like not just campy movies, but movies set at like camp, summer camps, not just for like horror, but also like just basic comedy. It just, you can really get a sense of like camaraderie and fun in these films, and I wish that there was any of that in this film, right? Like, think of like the movie Heavyweights, or basically any summer camp movie, Meatballs. There's all these fun movies where you have all these kid actors and just have the kids do fun stuff, and it just really doesn't have that. And even for a slasher film, I feel like it barely enters the genre. Now, with some of these ones I'm unfamiliar with, I'm just going to go through these in order. And I see here Art the Clown. And I'm going to make a very important point here, that because some of these newer ones I've never heard of, and Art is a relatively newer addition to the slasher genre. But I heard of this dude before I ever saw any of the films. I'm not even sure how many films there are, because he's in the All Hallows Eve movies, I think they're called. But there's several films with him in it before the Terrifier films. I'm pumped for Terrifier 3. Terrifier 2, 1 and 2 are awesome. I like it. I like him a lot. I don't know if he's going S tier, but he probably will. But I'll put him in A for now. High A. Now this, again, looks very familiar, but it just doesn't. Like, I couldn't tell you who this is. Like, if I really thought about it, I could probably. I know I've seen the film, but like, what are we even on about, right? Like, and some of these, I've watched there's so many horror films out there, right? You just gotta kind of. Like this one, it's darkly lit. I don't know who this is. I can't think of who this is. A lot of these are going right into unfamiliar because I can't place it, right? Now we got Tony Todd, also known as Candyman. Tony Todd plays Candyman. I don't know if the character in the movies has a name. I'm sure he does before he becomes Candyman. But Tony Todd, great guy. Candyman, interesting. I think Candyman really benefits from the time period that it exists. Just there was quite a lot of solid horror films. I feel like at certain times horror films can be like modern horror films really can drop the ball, whereas like older ones, when you actually required when there was a higher entry point, right? Like horror films there's so many of them. They're like the biggest genre of film because you can make them independently. You can make them on a tiny budget, right? Anywhere from a tiny budget to a huge budget. So that opened the door for tons of these films to be made. And then with everything going digital, it's easier than ever, right? Like it's harder than ever because so many films have been made. So it, like, on a technical aspect, it's easier than ever to make a horror film, but to actually have it stand out is harder than ever because of that barrier of entry being lowered. There's so much more competition out there. And yeah, Candyman's just awesome. I gotta put him in A tier. I gotta put him above the chick from Saw. He's not going S, but definitely A. Ooh, I see they got both versions of Chucky. Ooh. I'm thinking about doing a Chucky tier list and going through each and every individual movie because I have a lot to say about the Chucky franchise. Now we have Captain Spaulding from House of a Thousand Corpses, The Devil's Rejects, 3 from Hell. I feel like I wouldn't be surprised if the character was actually also in something else. I really like The Devil's Rejects. Obviously, like Sid Haig, don't know how to pronounce it, but he like passed away, I think, early into the filming of 3 from Hell or something, or he got sick. Really good. Really does a good job. Now it's interesting because I'm somebody who doesn't find clowns scary. I never have at all, even a tiny bit. So I don't know if he functions well as like a horror, like the clowniness of him being a clown isn't scary at all to me. Like it's more he's just a scary person that happens to be a clown, right? And he is like the comic, he's the funny guy, right? Like it works well. He works well. The clown persona works well as what his character functions as in the films that he's in, which is he's saying funny things and he's crazy and he's awesome. I think he's going to be right here next to Art, high A. Both of these guys could move to S. I'm not sure yet. What is this guy's name? It's been eating at me. I've seen him. He's the like hippie guy. He's in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, which there's a ton of Texas Chainsaw Massacre films, and they really go crazy in the newer ones. Like there's a ton of newer ones. There's more newer ones than there are old school ones, and there's more old school ones than you likely realize, right? Especially if you're a casual horror fan. Check out all of them, honestly. I I don't dislike even the bad newer ones as much as a lot of people do. But he's from the second, the sequel to the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, and he's awesome. He's got this like metal plate from the war, and he's like picking at his flesh, like around it's like an open wound, and there's a metal skull, and he really works well. Like the second Texas Chainsaw Massacre is so good. It just goes in a different direction from the original, and it works super well. It kind of just it morphs into something really interesting. Also, I believe it's the fourth one of the original Texas Chainsaw Massacres where one of Leatherface's family members is played by Matthew McConaughey. And he is so McConaughey. He is young McConaughey, and he is McConaugheying the heck out of it. So imagine Leatherface and his family member Matthew McConaughey giving an epic performance. And like the what do they call it? The main girl or whatever is played by Renee Zellweger. And it's really weird to have like this really low budget. Like it seemed like it's much lower budget than any of the other films. And the McConaughey of it all actually works beautifully. And it's balls to the wall. But the second one of the best. And this guy's awesome. He works so well in the film. He's somebody you want more of, but I feel like I gotta lower her and put him just past her in B tier. He just isn't in enough of the film, and he just kind of plays second fiddle to Leatherface in a major way. I would like Captain Spaulding, right? Like there's other slashers that he's like a team with, right? But Captain Spaulding stands out much more than the others. And so does this guy. I can't think of his name, right? Because he's only in the one film. But he does a super good job. We'll move right along to we'll talk first about the like actual Chucky. He's going in S. Come on. I think I might have even done a different slasher tier list, and he was like high S. Because yeah, he has everything you want from a slasher villain. First of all, he's like legitimately scary. He's a possessed doll that's possessed by a serial killer. And he has the ability to, because he's so small, he's able to like sneak around in ways that a lot of other slashers can't, right? Like even Art the Clown is a very tall dude. Somebody like Jason is enormous. Somebody like Michael Myers is enormous. Just these like giant hulking over 6 feet tall dudes. Whereas Chucky can really get the drop on you, right? Like Jason and Michael Myers often get the drop on people, but with Chucky, it's more believable. Even though he's a doll, he's tiny, and he also just like has the strength of his human self. Sometimes he has even more strength. Like he's just ridiculously durable, and just incredible. He talks. He's funny. He has a personality which gets explored, especially in like Bride of Chucky, Seed of Chucky, Cult of Chucky, the series, like just incredible. He's hard to beat. He's fantastic. Now the weird remake where it's all CG. I don't know if it's entirely CG, but it's like primarily CG. And I don't even remember if it's the same guy who like voices Chucky. I don't think it is. I don't know. I feel very harsh judging this version of Chucky because I feel like they did a good job. I'm of two minds. In one sense, it's terrible to move away from practical effects and into CG. But on the other hand, that's also like a studio decision. I'm sure everyone who worked on that film probably wished that they were doing practical effects. You know, they want to be in like a real Chucky movie, not this thing. But that being said, they do an okay job, right? Like if the real Chucky didn't exist, you would be like, this movie's kind of okay. It's kind of like a very very mediocre horror film. A cool concept that you like wish they would, like if the real Chucky didn't exist and only this existed, you would be like, all right, I hope they do more, expand on this, right? This is kind of like a cool idea. Hopefully they bring him back and he does a little more, something like that. Like it would actually be like regarded decently. But we have the original Chucky where there is practical effects and he's funnier. And this just isn't it. So in that world, the fake Chucky, you're going in F tier. You're going in F tier hard. And I feel bad because you're in a okay horror film. That the problem is the moment you compare it to the real Chucky, it just crumbles to ash. This guy, don't know who that is. The Orphan, is that what this is called? Mildred is her name? I don't know. What is that called? She's like she's like some kind of orphan. She gets adopted. It's actually like a old lady. She's just this like creepy. The movie's pretty good, but as a villain, I gotta put her down here with Angela, like below Angela. Like nothing wrong with her. They just needed to do more, right? Like maybe a sequel. Maybe even cross her into the Chucky universe somehow. That would probably be disastrous, but like, I don't know. I feel like, I forget if she even dies at the end of the movie or what even happens, but like she's pretty solid, but in a lot of ways it like doesn't work. Elijah Wood. Elijah Wood. What is this? I'm very confused. Elijah Wood. When is Elijah Wood? Like, if it was him from Sin City, yeah. Is that Elijah Wood? Yeah, that is. I don't know. Now, Freddy Krueger. Now we have the new Nightmare Freddy, which is hard to, like... I guess that's fair to have those three Freddys. We got New Nightmare, OG, and the guy who plays Rorschach in Watchmen. I can't think of the guy's name. New Nightmare Freddy, pretty solid. I really like New Nightmare, but I feel like it's more a really good concept, and it works, but it doesn't. I feel like it weakens Freddy in a lot of ways. Like he gets nerfed, and that kind of, it works really well as a film, but Freddy objectively gets nerfed, which just kind of takes away OG Freddy, S tier. He's cracking jokes, terrifying. That's the thing, is like Chucky's scary. Freddy is terrifying. He's got this glove of razors. He invades your dreams. You can't escape him unless you become no longer afraid of this guy who was an actual guy who's now this like demonic dream demon that is like immortal. So you can't permanently defeat him. And he's just he's incredibly hard to damage in any way. He has control over the like dream world almost entirely. He can just do an insane amount of things, and he feeds off of your fear, and he plays off of your fear, and he's in your mind. Just crazy. Now, I probably put him ahead of Chucky, but he's basically like the GOAT. Like, he is the scariest dude, and he's able to like get, as a slasher, he's able to slash in a way that like very few other characters can, right? Like, I would say Art the Clown is a cut above of Captain Spaulding, because Art is just I don't know, like Art the Clown is like supernatural, and Captain Spaulding is just exists in the real world. So both are like terrifying. You're gonna get pretty crazy kills from both of them. Like, even though Art has like supernatural abilities, realistically he primarily exists. It's like I don't know what you'd call it, a phantom or something. Kind of like Candyman. I guess Candyman has some wacky kills. I don't know. It's hard to explain what I'm trying to say, and I'm not even sure what I'm trying to say. Now this Freddy, the much more pedo Freddy, he I think it's cool in a way that they went darker, right? I think it actually works. In the way that, like, let's compare the two Chuckies, because I'm not going to put this version of Freddy in F tier. He's going nowhere close to there. Now, you could say it's unfair to judge Chucky CGI so harshly and not judge Freddy. Problem is like CGI Chucky is just, there's nothing special about him. Like, he basically is nerfed, and I don't know, like Freddy, you're not like begging for the real Freddy. You kind of hope that it becomes cooler than it is, but it's not the worst. I feel like I don't know where they would have went with the character and his abilities had this movie been a success. And I kind of wish that they had done, I don't know, maybe it was like a timing thing. Maybe they just needed a better idea. I feel like what they did is they made a very like faithful remake, but that becomes a problem because you don't have Robert Englund. You don't have the charm of Freddy. So it was kind of like a bad idea fundamentally, but the things that they change like actually kind of work. They make him more of a, they focus more on his like the fact that he is, because before Freddy like passes, before the town takes him out, burns him, he's a diddler, right? Like that's what he is. And they focus more on that, and it makes him more scary, right? Because when he's invading your dreams, he's not just trying to kill you necessarily, right? Like he's a creepy dude. Whereas like the OG Freddy, you kind of root for him some of the time, like most of the time you're rooting for Freddy. Whereas this one, you like never are. They're like, hey, like this isn't a guy you should root for. And even the OG he's still that, right? He still is also a PDF file. But he's like Robert Englund Freddy is so fun and awesome. Whereas this one's just entirely dark. So like it's definitely inferior, but it's not trying to live up to the Robert Englund Freddy. Whereas like with Chucky, what were they even doing? What were they thinking? Well, you needed to go in a huge different direction. You needed to do more. And I feel bad for both of these films because they do good jobs. They're actually kind of good. I think I'll put him below Candyman. I think he's definitely better than New Nightmare Freddy, but he is going below Candyman in A tier, which is like huge praise. Ghostface from a Scary Movie. I would be okay with putting that in D tier. I mean, it's a horror comedy, right? Because it's more of a comedy, it's got to go D tier. Actual Ghostface. Now I have a huge problem with Ghostface. I hate that, like, as a villain, it just being like a dude. It's just no. Just it's not making S tier or A tier. It just can't. Like it's just a concept of somebody just assuming, just wearing this costume and taking people out. That's what it is, and it doesn't really do anything for me. It's just it's almost more of a concept than it is a character. It's just a costume more than it is a character. Obviously incredibly iconic. There's like 6 or 7 films. I'm not gonna put total disrespect on Ghostface name, but you're going C tier. You're going high C tier, I guess. Interesting. Now Glenn/Glenda, the seed of Chucky, Chucky's son and daughter. It's crazy that they have so much Chucky stuff on here. So Glenda is the child of Chucky, which they do a really cool thing in the series. Now if you've seen the movies, right? Which there's a lot of. I'm saying if you've seen Curse of Chucky and Cult of Chucky, they kind of make reference to Glenda. And they definitely show up in the series Chucky, which is really cool. They do some pretty interesting stuff with this. And with the... But it... Whether it's there or whether it's in Seed of Chucky, Glenda does not really fully become a slasher, right? Like, the whole point of Seed of Chucky, of like the character, is that they're trans and that their parents are like don't really like understand or care in a certain way. Like they're not supportive. It's just like, hey, we got stuff to do. We need you to become this slasher because we're slasher villains. We're that's what we do. Join the family, which this child doesn't want to do. Now that being said, they are still are they even a possessed doll at that point? No, I guess. Like, are they a doll? Are they? Because they're born from the Tiffany doll. Like, Chucky and the Bride of Chucky, Tiffany, as dolls, if I remember correctly, they hook up and give birth to a child. So it's more of like a doll child that's alive. It's craziness. It's absolute craziness. Basically what happened is when they made Bride of Chucky, which becomes before Seed of Chucky, the like main writer said, hey, I'm gonna put some gay stuff in here. So, like, screw it. Like, we've already had 3 successful films. This film's gonna be successful. I'm putting in gay stuff. And they just they kept doing it. And it's interesting. Like, Seed of Chucky is a crazy film, but very interesting. But the like non-slasherness, the fact that this person is not a slasher, not really. I think they got to go D tier, sadly, but I'm gonna put them above the Scary Movie Ghostface. Now let's keep trucking, because we got Hannibal Lecter, very cool, very effective. Honestly, not scary at all. Like, I really like Silence of the Lambs as a film, but I just this guy's a cannibal and he's creepy. He's a creepy cannibal and he's locked up and he's helping Jodie Foster find out who's taking people out. It just doesn't do it for me. Like, it just isn't all that scary. I think in the other ones, he doesn't do all that much slashing ever, really. So, I guess low C, maybe even D, maybe even below Glenda. I'm sorry, like, Hannibal Lecter is an awesome character, but in a film that's like very loosely, like, I honestly, like, Silence of the Lambs is like the only good film in that franchise, and the dude like doesn't do any slashing in it. You know what I mean? Like, he's more of a good character in a cop movie than he is any kind of the movie's more of a cop detective movie than it is it's more of a psychological thriller kind of than even a horror film. I just can't place him very high. Sorry. No, my Bloody Valentine, solid. Sure, like, Nothing wrong with it. Not putting it above Ghostface. It is what it is. Jack Frost. First of all, I'm not sure who this is, so they're going in unfamiliar. Jack Frost. Solid, funny. The sequels to Jack Frost are real weird. They go in some strange directions. I'll put it in C tier, like low C. Now there's two different versions here of Jason. And I'm confused. I'm very confused as to why. Like, is one of these from the remake? I feel like the one on the left would be from the remake. Or is it the one on the right? He's got a chain. Let's say the one on the left is the original. It looks old. So that'd be like Friday the 13th Part 3, because that mask is looking pretty fresh. He's going S tier. He's the he's like the end boss of all zombies. He's basically people classify him as a zombie. He's just this immortal guy. He keeps on trucking. He's he's got a like ridiculous walking speed. He's just this big uber zombie monster who just keeps on coming. It's cool that he like typically doesn't kill kids, which is awesome. I guess that there's like kind of rules to him, and there's like ways to beat him or at least slow him down to take him out for quite a while. Like, I don't know, for some reason it works for me way better than Michael Myers. Like, Michael Myers is a big guy, and so is Jason. And Michael Myers, like there's a huge strength gap between Jason and Michael Myers, to where like Jason is clearly like way, way stronger, thus making it like kind of further from being in the real world kind of thing going on. But I think that makes him like kind of scarier. Like, Michael Myers is also has superhuman strength, but it is like barely superhuman. Like, he's I don't know. He's got Kaioken times 10, whereas Jason's Super Saiyan 2. A random scaling that makes no sense, but whatever. Jason's incredible. Despite him not talking, he has like quite a bit of personality, right? Like, he doesn't take out kids. He doesn't like water, typically. They kind of change him up quite a bit. He's incredibly easy to root for as just this like lumbering slasher villain that he doesn't have the personality at all, right? Of Freddy or Chucky or Spaulding. Not at all, but yet he has like this presence to him that is just epic. It's hard to explain. I can't even quantify what it is. Now, remake Jason. Now this is gonna be controversial because I like the remake, and it's also not a remake, right? Like, let's place him next to Freddy for a moment. Sorry, I got a cough. But next to like the remake Freddy. Remake Freddy is like a full-on reboot or whatever, right? It is just a totally different Freddy who's creepier, and they just restart things, right? Whereas Jason, I don't even understand how it's a remake. Because there's people, a group of people, they go to Camp Crystal Lake. They have iPhones or whatever, the latest technology, which there was quite a distance from when, what would have even been like the late 2000s, 2000, I don't know, I would say somewhere between 2005, 2009, that Freddy vs. Jason came out. And then this movie came out in like 2014, 2016, something like that. So a decent chunk of time. And, you know, they have the cell phones of that time. Freddy vs. Jason, I think some of the characters had like cell phones. Like they would have had like first generation iPhones, or maybe, who knows, right? Whereas with this film, when it's set, every person's having a smartphone on them, right? Totally different time period. And so why does this remake have to be a remake? Why does this have to be a different Jason? And one thing that I think is really cool, so I say this Jason isn't even a remake. The film's not a remake. Why would it be? There's no reason for it to be. And one thing that I think is very interesting is this Jason uses a bow and arrow to take somebody out. Which, yeah, Jason is a zombie, but the fact that he clearly has personality traits, that Jason has been like bathed in acid, drowned multiple times, taken out in multiple ways, taken to space, which you could argue that Jason X is probably a different timeline, because I guess that's way in the future, so it doesn't have to be technically. But think about it. Why is this movie a remake at all? I say it's just a sequel. It is just a sequel. And the fact that Jason, right, clearly he doesn't speak, but he has thoughts. He does things, right? He must have some kind of abilities that we haven't seen. And he lives at a camp. He lives at a campground. You're telling me that in all that time, he's just doing nothing? Like, he has a house. Like, he built himself a ramshackle house with an altar to his mom. He built that. He built that thing. Like, this guy has some construction abilities to him, right? Otherwise, that his ramshackle house, it would have received some damage from the elements, right? Like, he is maintaining this thing to some extent. Even if it was like a little building, a little shack that he came across, he has maintained this to some level. So and plus he went to camp as a kid. So him using a bow and arrow, it kind of makes sense that he would have either learned that as a kid, or maybe even learned that as an adult, as this immortal adult who's been like alive for decades and decades at a campground. That's where he chooses to live. So it would kind of make sense that he, you know, learned some basic skills that you might pick up at a campground. You know what I mean? Like, so when he uses the bow and arrow, I was already watching the movie and I'm like, how is this a remake? This is just a sequel. There's no, like, group of kids go to Camp Crystal Lake. Why would this have to be a remake? It doesn't have to be. They got, you know, they all got smartphones. This is just a sequel. Like, there's no reason for this to be a remake. So I am actually going to remove this other Jason off the list. He is not being placed on the list. He is the same Jason. Screw you if you say otherwise. And he's good. That Friday the 13th movie is actually good. It fits. It's not phenomenal. It doesn't do anything like super cool, other than he uses a bow and arrow, which I think works for the character. It makes him scarier, because it's like, I mean, think about it. We've seen him take out Kevin Bacon with an arrow. We've seen him use machetes, knives, axes. I think he even used like a chainsaw at one point. He's used like some other tools. He understands cars enough to where he makes it so your car isn't going to work when you turn it on. This guy isn't just like some totally incapable, bumbling zombie. He's like a cross. He's not only is he the strongest, most like final boss of zombies because of his strength and immortality, but he's also way more intelligent than zombies. And I don't know. I feel like it doesn't go talked about enough. Now, Jigsaw, solid. Just the fact that there's 10 Saw movies, like, this franchise definitely carved out its place in horror history, right? Like, the Scream movies, I really like the Scream movies, but they kind of function better as like movies. And the first couple for sure function as like horror films that are also doing more than like a horror film. They're like almost a subgenre of horror film, of a I don't know, like analytical horror films, kind of like New Nightmare. I mean, they're like made by the same dude. It makes a lot of sense. But Jigsaw, I feel like it's too much in a way. Like, he goes after people because they're not appreciative of life. So he's like targets suicidal people and goes after them. Like, it's weird. It's such a, he targets very specific people and like stalks them and like specializes a trap to meet their specific way that they're unappreciative of life. It's so specific that it really detracts. I feel like it's kind of almost too weird without the fact that it doesn't have a paranormal aspect to it, right? Like, if this was a superpower that he does this, if he was just like generating a trap world, a pocket dimension trap, then it would be freaky, right? Like, in the way that Freddy Krueger goes after your fears, Jigsaw is going after something, but he's just a guy. He's like this old dying guy. It requires that he stalk you and like constructs stuff and potentially buys property. It's way too, it's just not like scary. It doesn't, and you don't necessarily need to be scary. Like I said, Captain Spaulding doesn't scare me. So maybe I put him like slightly above his replacement. Yeah, I think that's fair. And like when you look at this, right? So what do we have so far? Ghostface being in C tier, I feel like, is the wildest thing. But think about it. It's like a different person every single film. He's not a character. He's a concept. And that concept is person in a Halloween costume. Like, it's an iconic franchise, but we're talking characters here. Leatherface. Ooh, 2 Leatherfaces. 3 Leatherfaces, potentially. I don't know. This probably isn't Leatherface, whatever this is. I'm just also going to... Well, we'll just divide it by, like, era. We'll say the original 4. This is the original 4. Like I said, just epic. He's got to go S. Very similar to Jason and like Michael Myers. Just a big, strong, dumb dude who just goes all out. He's just, he's coming after you. Leatherface, though, gets very distracted, has his own stuff going on. He isn't this like Jason is coming right for you, and he ain't gonna relent most of the time. Sometimes you can get kind of distracting him, you can build a lot of distance, but he is hyper focused. He has that like zombie focus to him, right? Leatherface has a lot more of his humanity. He can like somewhat talk and more functioning. I find Leatherface is like too funny too much of the time. I feel like the focus that Jason has puts him a cut above. The fact that he's just gonna keep coming for you, you'll run away. You ain't really getting away. You can escape Leatherface. Like if you get some distance and you like hide behind a tree, you might escape, right? But like Jason, no. If you're hiding behind a tree, he's gonna keep coming. He is trucking towards you, and he's out for you. He ain't stopping. He ain't getting too distracted ever. And that his determination is insane. So I think Jason's a little bit higher. Now, I'm just going to say that this black and white one is sort of more of the new era Leatherface, who I think it is fair to categorize differently, who really isn't all that different, right? Like there's not really all that much to work with, right? Like the guy who wears human flesh as a mask, as like a full head mask often, and he uses a chainsaw, and he's big and he's strong and he's dumb and he's got a family. He's often the family contributes so much, right? Or whoever that he happens to be working with. Now, I think I gotta put Art the Clown above Leatherface. I think I have to do it. Now, that's tricky because Art the Clown is... I feel like Art the Clown hasn't peaked yet. And that's scary because I need him to peak. Right? I don't necessarily need the third one to be incredible. But I need, like the third Terrifier. I mean, he's been in more than 3 films. But I need for their, like, Terrifier 4, 5, or 6. For something like, there needs to be some kind of, like, not necessarily transformation. But I just feel like they haven't nailed it yet. And they will, and this guy could be like top 3, and it just hasn't happened yet. That's what I'm feeling. Now this other Leatherface, like new era Leatherface, he's just going to be inferior, right? Like there's nothing wrong with him, but you're talking about like a totally different era. Because that 4th one I'm talking about with McConaughey, like, that would have either been early 90s or late 80s. I'm pulling up a list. Sorry, I got a cough. Oh, it's actually it's the fourth one here. Let's pull up a list. This fourth one here, The Next Generation, 1995, right? So you go like 74, 86, 90, 95, 2000, but I think that's like a documentary, 2003, up into 2022. So this would be like 2003 to 2022 would be the second Leatherface. And there's weird, like, one of these is like a prequel. So there's like enormous time jumps, and the era that these later ones are in is just, they don't work the same way. That's why like the Leatherface feels like it's separated for the first four from the other ones. Is just, also the fourth one is like clearly the most, like the third and fourth one are way low budget. So they kind of like have this low budget quality that the first four have. That the budget, like, it's way higher in the other ones. Not way higher, but like in a horror film sense, right? In that like grainy quality that the old ones have just makes it stand out. And it's a newer Leatherface is kind of a victim of the time period that he exists in, which granted is like a 20-year time period, but the other one exists in a different 20-year time period that I feel like just helps Leatherface be scarier and kind of like more of a character and have like more to him, like more character to him, probably due to the families in those like working so much better. Because I can only remember, of the newer ones, I genuinely only remember the cop in the one, I think the 2003 one, is, I think it was the guy from like Full Metal Jacket who played the cop, and it kind of worked well in the 2003 one. So this Leatherface, he's just not hitting the same way. I think I got to put him right here, actually. Works really well. Kind of below the Saw characters. Hard to quantify too much, but who is this guy? I have no idea what that is. Michael Myers, the two different eras. Again, just a crazy long time period. Where are we gonna place him? I think Michael Myers is just like wildly inferior to Jason. He's just Jason without any like oomph to him. Now he's more of a human, so he's gonna get distracted. He's gonna give up. He's gonna disappear, and then I hate the thing in these Halloween movies where he is like he just appears randomly. He just spooks you. Like, I don't think that works at all, and I don't know why they do it. Like, he's showing up full mask, like mask on. Like, it'd be crazy for him to be anywhere without his mask. But this like 6'4" dude is lurking with a mask and just popping up to scare you. Ooh, like to spook you. I don't know. It's just dumb. I don't like it at all. I'm putting the newer one ahead of the older one, and I'm putting them in B tier. That's how I feel. I mean, no disrespect, but Michael Myers, you're just, I don't know, I just don't like you. I just don't like you. You're just not, you're nothing compared to Jason. Like, even though you have way more of like human, even though you're just a human who like decides to be mute out of like trauma or whatever, or just a crazy person, you're just no Jason. It's just what it is. You're just not it. You have less character to you. I don't root for you at all, ever. Just films aren't that great. Now, Buddy from Psycho. I gotta rate you lowly too, man. I actually like the Vince Vaughn one quite a bit. I like the original, but it's more of the like style of it, the character of the film, if that makes sense. The creating a slasher film before there were slasher films, the originality of it. Like, they do a really good job. So, Mr. Bates, probably above Jigsaw. I think that's really fair. I think that's fair enough. Who else do we got? Pamela Voorhees. Mom, she gets revenge because her son Jason was tragically drowned because the camp counselors were too busy, I don't know, smoking pot, hooking up. Kind of overboard, kind of a big overreaction. I think this film, it gets a bad rap because of the other films. Because she's the slasher and Jason isn't. But that's kind of that only makes sense. Like, Jason didn't exist as a slasher, right? Because like this, she's the slasher in the first one, so Jason didn't even exist yet, right? So I feel like a lot of people have very uncharitable viewpoints on her that don't really make a lot of sense. I think Pamela Voorhees has got to go into C. I think if the other films didn't exist, this would be like kind of okay. And it still is. It's still like okay, right? Like, she gets some decent slasher. She's like a Karen, right? I think there even is a Karen horror film. And she's basically a Karen, which I understand it, right? If your child passed away because of just pure neglect from camp counselors, you'd be pretty upset, right? Like, you'd be pretty wildly upset. At the same time, though, if you have like a special needs kid who can't swim, why are you leaving them in the care of like 1980s teenagers at a summer camp? You know, like, it's and even like every time you see Camp Crystal Lake, the like main building that they have is right next to the lake. Like, there isn't much to this camp that we ever see besides like the shack that Jason takes over that's like a decent walk away, and that building that's right next to the lake that you could, like, in 10 seconds, if you were sprinting right out of the building, be into the water of the lake. Why'd you send your special needs kid who, like, cannot swim there? This is probably a bad idea to do. No, I get it. It's the 1980s. Like, think of the show Stranger Things, where these kids are until, like, you know, obviously, like, Will goes missing and stuff. And then, you know, but Will goes missing because they're allowed to just bike wherever they want. Their parents aren't watching them. They have free reign to do whatever they want, right? And that was kind of the mindset back then, is like kids had way more, parents were allowed their kids to like just go off on their own, do whatever, be out super late, go way across town, ride their bike anywhere. They left the kids to their own devices, whereas people don't do that anymore. So it's a little understandable, but I mean, you have a special needs kid who can't swim. Why do you leave them there? Like, I just, So she's also kind of to blame, but I don't know. She works well. She's just like a beast Karen who who oversteps wildly to seek revenge, and it works quite well. That's why they made it a franchise. American Psycho. Patrick Bateman. Christian Bale. I think this is like wildly overrated. I don't find this villain interesting at all. Far less interesting than Psycho. Well, there's kind of this thing, right? Me and my buddy talk about this, about how people are way too rich in film and TV shows, right? Watch the show Modern Family. Every house that the characters live in is a mansion, right? Like Phil's house, mansion. Why can't I think of Ed O'Neill's character's name? But everyone in a lot of shows, they just have these giant, like, 5-6 bedroom houses. Just these enormous houses with enormous yards. $1 million plus houses. As if this is like the norm, when it's not seen as what it is, which is not the norm. These are very wealthy people. Maybe that's like a lot more common in the United States, but not any of the areas that I've been in. Absurd. And I live in like a fairly affluent area of Canada, where there is a ton of people making $100K a year. Like a decent, tons of people, hundreds if not thousands of people in my area. And like the Canadian dollar isn't, it doesn't go as far as an American dollar, but the difference isn't that much, right? So like someone making $100K in Canada is like somebody making $90K in America, equivalent, roughly. But yeah, this guy in Patrick Bateman, he's just like super rich, super douchey, like business guy. How is this the whole like point? I get it, it's like a book or whatever, but how do people find this at all relatable? This like turbo douche relatable in any way, or like there being any kind of like humanity to it? And because a lot of people will cite that as like the what's good about the movie, why it's so great, is this character he's just a real guy, such a real guy. He's so real. The reality of this character existing in the real world and being a real person. I've never met anyone remotely like Patrick Bateman at all, in like any way. The only person I can even think of that I'm like familiar with I'm a big fan of reality TV, right? And I watch a lot of YouTubers and stuff, and I love entertainment. Like there's this guy on the show Big Brother, Dr. Will Kirby, who's a plastic surgeon. He gives me some Patrick Bateman vibes, but like only some. I'm not even familiar with another human being who has that kind of like rich douche kind of oozing from their pores kind of thing that Patrick Bateman has, and it's just so wildly unrelatable. Wildly unrelatable. I don't know, maybe like New York, like Wall Street douchebags, it's kind of a common thing, but why is it that what are people talking about with this movie or this character? It's going like maybe he beats, I guess he beats Jack Frost, which if I didn't go over this, but there's a horror film of Jack Frost. Check it out if you like slashers. It's okay. Who is this ninja? I don't know who this ninja is at all. I don't know who this lady is at all. I'm assuming from one of those like Jordan Peele movies that nobody cared about. And then there's Jason again. Is this the Jason where it was that like Tommy guy? I mean, I'm just not putting that. This looks very familiar. And I get that it's like technically a different character, but they're serving as Jason. Like it works well, but like that, or is that the new Jason? I think that's the Jason, because there's like 2 or 3 of the movies where it's someone pretending to be Jason, which is crazy, but it works fine enough. It's not, there's not enough to talk about there for it to really matter. I'm not gonna bother ranking it. So we got new Pennywise and old Pennywise. A new Pennywise, since it's there first, we'll talk about him. I like the structure of the 2 films so much better than the original miniseries, because the original is actually a 2-part like TV special kind of thing. So that's why it's so long, is that it's actually like 2 TV movies put together as one, part 1, part 2. So that's why it's weirdly like 3+ hours long. And as a viewing experience, like it only makes sense to watch the original as watch one half of it and then watch the other, and that's how it was intentionally made. So it's like 2 films. But I just like the structure. I think that structure works better in the newer ones. It feels like the originals have this like TV movie quality to them, right? Whether it's budget or like stylistic choices of the way that they were made, the way that they were shot and like edited, it just doesn't, it's got a cheapness to it. Not just like a low budget thing, because there's a low budget thing in so many horror films, but there's this TV crap, I guess you could call it, a TV crappiness to the original. So new Pennywise. Now Pennywise, and Stephen King even admitted this, is just an inferior ripoff of Freddy Krueger. Think about it. Pennywise feeds off your fears. He can transform himself into all these things. He basically attacks you in your daydreams and, you know, manipulates the reality of your daydreams and sometimes your actual dreams. Like, he's just, Stephen King unintentionally ripped off Like, he must not have, he didn't realize he was ripping off Freddy Krueger, but that's what he was doing. And Pennywise is blatantly inferior. Freddy Krueger being this, like, guy who was horribly burnt. Freddy Krueger's way more powerful, way scarier looking, has way more personality to him. He's very funny, which is something that Pennywise just kind of never is. Like, the old Pennywise, you're gonna get some, like, humor because it's because of who it is playing him, right? You know what I mean? You know, it's Dr. Frankenfurter. He's got some charm to him, some pizzazz. He's got that, like, he does a really good job playing Pennywise the clown. And the fact that in the original that it's just makeup and not this, like, CGI monstrosity, demented head looking at jabroni in the new ones. Like, just, it works better. But again, like I said, the old Pennywise suffers from being in this weird TV movie where there's a level of, like, crap. There's huge pacing issues because it's not two films or one film. It's two TV films, two TV specials. So even though the new Pennywise exists in more well-structured content, it just doesn't work. Like, I feel like his kind of dream sequence stuff works when he's attacking people in their daydreams or whatever. Because of the CG, it actually works a lot better. But I feel like it also is dog crap because what they do with this character's head, his head being so bulbous and, like, light bulb shaped, like, it's ridiculous. It looks pathetic. It's distractingly bad. And then at the end, when he's, like, turning into, like, you know, giant Pennywise, and it turns into a giant spider and stuff, it's just goofy and dumb looking. It's so trash. It's such a pathetic ripoff of Freddy Krueger, who just works so well. Almost all, like, Freddy Krueger works super well. There's some goofiness in there, some stuff that kind of doesn't work, but like 95% of the time, Freddy's hitting on all cylinders. Pennywise, it's like 80% of the time he's hitting on no cylinders. It doesn't work at all. Clowns, again, I don't find clowns scary at all. This new Pennywise doesn't even look like a clown. He's got this giant, like, light bulb head. He's like an alien, which I guess Pennywise is an alien, maybe. He sucks. He sucks horribly. He sucks horribly, honestly. I'm putting him below Angela. The old school one, at least actually, like, it's actually a person in makeup. You know what I mean? And because it's old, I think it might have been the 90s. Like, early 90s? I want to say it could have been late 80s though, but 1990 exactly. It's funny. It's exactly kind of in between where I was saying. Holy, this is even. I looked it up on IMDb, and it's got a 6.8 out of 10, which I think is kind of generous. I think that's. But it's fairly appropriate, right? Like, it just doesn't function very well. Now, it at least has that quality that I was saying doesn't exist in Sleepaway Camp, where how do you got kids out of summer camp, but you don't have any of that, like, kids having fun, that adventure, that, like, freedom, right? That, like, we are a group of people stuck living together and it's summer and you're having fun, that it's just completely vacant from Sleepaway Camp. You get that in the original, and even somewhat in the new It. You do get that a tiny bit, but you get a decent helping of that in the part 1 of the TV. What do they call it on here? They even like categorize it differently on IMDb than a film. Yeah, TV miniseries. It's a 2-part TV miniseries, but the Friends, you actually get that kids having fun and exploring, especially when they like go to the sewer. It has this like genuine creepiness that I feel like is somehow also they just didn't capture in the newer ones, in the newer It. But Pennywise, either way, I don't know if Tim Curry is just does too good of a job. He's too charming or something. I don't... Like, he is charming, which I guess you would want from a clown, and he's believable as a clown, but just the concept of the scary clown just doesn't actually scare me at all. At all. And whether it's Art or Captain Spaulding, doesn't scare me in the slightest. Like, Art is pretty freaky looking, right? Like, there's no aspect of he's trying to be anything besides a freaky looking clown. Like, Art is the scariest of clowns. There's no actual clowning that he does. He's not going to any kid's birthday party. He's not trying to like lure you in with a facade. He's trying to scare the crap out of you from moment one. I actually went to a convention in London, Ontario, and the guy who plays Art the Clown, this was before I ever saw anything with Art the Clown, whether it be Terrifier or All Hallows Eve. He was there in full costume and makeup, and it's like, holy crap, that looks scary. Like, geez, I want to see what that thing is in, because my goodness. And it looked like just like in the movie, but actually looked better than in the movie, because the guy is actually just there in costume and makeup at this convention. He's just walking around, which was like ridiculously cool. All right, now Samara from The Ring, pretty effective at like being creepy, very creepy. I would say not very scary. I find the whole thing like you watch a videotape and then 7 days later you're cooked because this thing's gonna crawl out your TV. Like, pretty goofy of a concept. I mean, I guess it's not that goofy of a concept, because it's the idea of like you're cursed, right? You're screwed. And the movie functions perfectly well as that, but as a villain, like, she brings the scares, but kind of like nothing beyond that. I mean, she's practically silent. So just from what she is, she's got to be ranked low. I haven't seen enough of this dude. I don't know what this is. Who is this guy? I gotta like look closer. I don't even know who that's supposed to be. Then there's a guy with these like guys with like bags on their heads. Don't know who they are. Stepfather. Two different. I think these are two different versions of the like stepfather. And then there's this guy. I don't know who this guy is. So I'm gonna rank Pinface, Leprechaun, and Tiff. Or Pinhead. Did I say Pinface? Pinhead. Pretty cool. Probably gonna go A tier right there. New Freddy is... Freddy's just too awesome. Like, I literally have Freddy at the top of S tier, and he's probably gonna remain there. New Freddy, if you even want to call him that, because I feel like if they're gonna continue, they're probably gonna find somebody. Didn't Robert Englund pass away? I think he did. I could be wrong. I'm just like claiming somebody's passed on. I'm fairly certain that he... No? 77 though. Yeah, because he's in Stranger Things in like the recent season. I feel like he's probably too old to play Freddy though. Like 77's real old. That being said, we also have like... I feel like they could use his voice and maybe use a different actor. And maybe... like when they do a close-up on the eyes, use his eyes. Or something like that. Like they do a good job of it in Stranger Things. So I feel like moving forward, they're going to go with Robert Englund-esque Freddy and not this one. You know, but this is really high for Pinhead. Like, again, he kind of suffers similarly to what Leatherface kind of suffers from really reaching the top of the top, is that he doesn't have much personality, and so much is determined by the other Cenobites, by like who his crew is, and it's often like a different crew, you know. So there's so many variables at play, and it prevents like Pinhead from really kind of taking shape in the way that he needs to. And the whole like puzzle box of it all, I feel like it really diminishes things. And I feel like the Cenobites themselves are very... they're kind of crazy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, conceptually, if you saw the Cenobites, right? If you did the puzzle box thing and you saw these Cenobites, are you really going to be freaking out at Pinhead? Like, if you know who Pinhead is, you're going to be like, oh crap, that's Pinhead, I'm cooked. You're probably just going to give up at that point if you like understand what Pinhead is. And I mean, it would freak the crap out of you. He's a freaky looking dude, but I don't know, it just... he's got some really good... like, maybe I gotta shuffle these around a little bit. Maybe I move Candyman down a bit. Yeah, I think I feel a little bit more comfortable with that. Now, Pinhead, despite having some really, really awesome slashings, kind of... I also just haven't seen... I don't know how many of the Hellraiser films I've seen. I feel like I've probably seen at least half, but they keep making them, and I haven't seen like any new... I have no idea. At least the last 3 that have come out, I haven't seen. So I feel like Pinhead is very subject to like bouncing around here and potentially placing higher, but for now, from what I've seen, A tier, which is really good. So, Leprechaun. I'm surprised that they haven't made a new Leprechaun in a long time. And I feel like people... I feel like the first 3 Leprechaun movies are awesome, are like really, really good. And people mention the original, but I think the one where they go to Vegas is like way better. And it works so well, as you have a leprechaun, the whole idea of like luck and everything. I feel like it could be explored more, especially in like modern time with all these like online casinos and all this like wild stuff. Again, like the horror genre in general, stuff becomes complicated and kind of stupid. As if you've seen the newest Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie, you're gonna be like, all right, when they're dancing in the bus and there's people filming, like live streaming Leatherface taking people out, you're like, all right, well, this becomes very complicated to exist in the real world at all when literally everyone has a camera on them. And now that there's stuff like ring cams and stuff, and people having cameras on their cars, it becomes really hard to kind of write around that fact. Whereas a lot of these older horror films, that wasn't a thing, right? Like, somebody ain't gonna have a camera on them. They're not just gonna be able to record video at any moment. That being said, you just got to write around it a little bit. Just have it where... Because why would the leprechaun show up on a video? The fact that he's been several places where he would have been on camera should pretty much tell you that he's got some kind of... like, he's a magical creature. He I don't know. There's so much you can do with the character. He's no Chucky. Like, I feel like he's close though. I don't really see me not putting Leprechaun in S tier. I think I got to put him above Leatherface. Like, he is freaky, and the problem is that he's poorly defined. And he's very limited. Like, he's very escapable. And so is Chucky. Like, you have these characters who just have a very, like, clear physical limitation, which kind of makes them a little bit immune, right? Like, they're very escapable. The problem... But to be fair, Leprechaun has, like, magic, so he's going to show you. And I feel like that's kind of also the problem. My biggest problem with Ghostface, and I felt this way ever since I was, like, a kid, like, maybe, like, 10 years old, is I have the ability, like, I'm not the fastest person in the world. Like, throughout elementary school, I was always the 4th or 5th fastest runner of the kids in my grade. Not real athletic, but I always had the ability to, like, run for a very long time, like jog, like, not like full out sprint, but I could run and keep running. I could run faster than the huge majority of people and just keep on running for an incredibly long amount of time. Now, like I don't know about, like, some kind of, like, marathon length, but basically, as a kid, I felt, and I was quite tall. I was, like, the tallest kid in my grade, at my school anyway, and I could just run and run and run. And I would watch Cops. I'd be like, huh, I could outrun all these people, like, because not quite sprinting, but like a near sprinting speed, like a 90% sprint, not full balls to the wall 100% sprint, but a 90% sprint, I could just go for so long. Like, I just felt like I could just run at nearly top speed, and I could run to the other side of town. So it's like, I know that I can run and me going at like 90%, not giving it everything, but almost giving it everything, that level of speed was like way faster than 95% of people, right? And that was a pace that I could keep for like ever. So even as a kid at like 10 years old, I'm like, I can outrun Ghostface from these movies. Like, this dude ain't gonna catch me because they're gonna run out of breath. They'll never catch me because I'm just a little bit faster, and I can run faster, and I can certainly run way longer. I can run faster and keep that pace for like a half hour at least. So I'm going to be making huge distance, and that distance is just going to keep growing, right? And that's how, so I'm like, this thing, like, whatever. And plus I was already big. I was already like, me at like 12, I was larger than a lot of grown men. So I'm like, all right, well, I'm just going to shove you out of the way and then run. And you ain't ever going to catch me because I'm going to run and keep on running, and you will not catch me, thus completely mitigating the threat you pose. Now, obviously, a lot of these characters, whether it be through magic or perseverance or dedication, would take you out. But if you're a fan of horror, you're like, there's tons of solutions to that. I can just move away. I can just get a weapon. And it's weird that a magical character like the Leprechaun has those like physical limitations, and it's often played for laughs, just like it is with Chucky. So clearly Leprechaun in S tier. Now, how does he he definitely beats Leatherface, but does he beat Art the Clown? Probably. I think I can safely say that. I don't think he beats Jason. Definitely doesn't beat Chucky or Freddy. But yeah, Leprechaun, wildly underrated, wildly underutilized. I know he's been to space, he's been to the hood, he's been to Vegas. But where else does he go? He's got to go somewhere, and you can do a lot with him. Sometimes the problem with magical characters is they can kind of do anything. So he's also kind of like overpowered. So I feel like it would be really hard to write a movie for him, because it's complicated with some of these characters, right? Because you would want to consult with whoever wrote the other films, and when you have a character who has almost endless possibilities, like a magic wielder has, you wouldn't want to like spit in the face of the person who created this character, right? You absolutely would not want to do that. But is that person really going to want to give you that information to where you could write for that character? Because if I had to write a Leprechaun movie, that's how I would feel. I would say, hey, somebody created this character and it's really awesome, and I would want to reach out to them. But are they really going to want other people writing movies for their character? Because at a certain point, you, as a writer, you are the decision maker. You're creating this world that the characters exist in. So maybe there's something going on there as to... I'm honestly confused as to why there aren't more Leprechaun movies. Because I feel like it's been decades since there's been one. Leprechaun movies. Yeah, the original was 1993. Then the sequels are 94, 95, 96, 2000 was In the Hood, 2003 back to the Hood. Looks like then there's this weird Leprechaun Origins, which was like garbage. It had like nothing to do with it. And then there's Leprechaun Returns in 2018. So I guess there's a 2018 Leprechaun film. And it looks like it actually... Because the Leprechaun Origins, it's like... It's got nothing to do with Leprechaun. So I guess there's a 2018 film that looks like it's on Prime Video, maybe? Leprechaun Returns. He's looking like real wrinkly and beat up. I don't know if it's I don't know. I do not know what to think about it. It's probably worth checking out. I probably will check it out. But even still, think about that. So this 2014 one's not a Leprechaun movie. It's like a totally different Leprechaun, totally different, nothing to do with it. So 15 years between Back to the Hood and Leprechaun Returns. And then that was like 6 years ago. I never even like heard about this at all, which is usually a bad sign. When I haven't heard of you, that's like a huge issue. The fact that I don't even know that this exists, right? Like with these ones in the unfamiliar tier, these ones that I genuinely don't know, like this woman, that's a problem. That's a problem that me as a horror fan, somebody who's gone to horror conventions. Now there's way too many horror films for anybody to ever actually watch them all and be familiar with everything. But if I've never heard of you, and the fact that I've heard of Art the Clown before I ever met Art the Clown. You know what I mean? You hear about stuff, right? They're like, there's no way you didn't hear about the horror film Get Out. There's no way you didn't hear about The Conjuring. So we'll place Tiff. Chucky's bride, Tiffany. I think she works great. I think she works better as a character in a slasher franchise who's also a slasher than she does. Like, she doesn't have her own film, right? And there's no film where she is the primary slasher. She plays second fiddle to Chucky, for sure. Now, she does that in the very best of the Chucky films, Bride of Chucky. And she also does that through the best of everything to do with Chucky, which is from Bride of Chucky and beyond. A lot of people like the original, and the original's great, but from Bride of Chucky and beyond, it's certainly better. And Tiff is just a great addition. She works great. Like, it works really well. Believable. Like, the fact that Chucky has a bride, and to introduce a character, I feel like this is one of the only times this has ever happened in a horror film, where you'd add a character in one of these slasher universes and it works super well, right? I can't even think of other examples as to when that happens, right? Like, I'm sure it happens with Pinhead, and it does kind of happen with Jigsaw and this Amanda or whatever. I can't remember the character's name. I think it's Amanda. But the fact that that Chucky has a bride, and it's believable that this character, that this person would be a slasher. It's crazy, and it works so much better than it should. This is going to be bold where I place her. And I think, like Pinhead, she has a lot of room to improve. Potentially. I don't know why you would. I'm not saying make a Tiffany film. But, I don't know. She's kicking butt. She's been kicking butt since she showed up on our screens. She continues to kick butt. There's this Chucky series is awesome. I'm putting her on top of A tier. I think the other tier list that I did was like horror characters or something, because I remember Ash from Evil Dead, and I think it might have been kind of like a horror villain tier list. I think that's what it was. And then I'm like, Ash isn't a villain, right? And he's certainly not a slasher, so I mean, he slashes up the enemies. He literally does it with a chainsaw. But he I think it's appropriate that he not be on this type of list. But if he's such like a horror icon that you like kind of expect him to be at the same time. So yeah, I feel pretty comfortable with this list. And I don't make something like this to roast characters. And I'll move this. I guess I should have kept myself over here the whole time, because then it shows more of like the clear rankings. But yeah, this is the list. Now, I think an argument could be made that Chucky and Freddy swap places, because who's the real GOAT? I think Chucky's funnier, and there's more Chucky content. I think New Nightmare might have been 8, and then this is it's either the 7th or 8th Freddy movie. Then there's Freddy vs. Jason, then the remake. So I feel like there's at least 10. But with Chucky, there's also a series that there's at least 2 seasons of. I'm not sure how many there are. I feel like there's definitely 2. I've watched 2. But have they done a 3rd season? They have. Is that one that I've watched? No, because it says the episodes aired or whatever on this year, so there's no way I watched it. It looks like half of it aired last fall, and then the rest of it aired this spring, so I haven't watched it yet. Huh. Interesting. Fubo? Apparently, if you have a premium Fubo subscription, it might be on there. Weird. You know when you Google stuff and it says like where you can watch it? It must be, you must need some additional stuff, because it says Amazon Prime Video, but it says premium subscription. Does that mean, because Amazon Prime, when you go through it, there's all these other like different subscriptions to all these like channels and stuff. So do you need that? You probably do. But then it also has Crave premium subscription, which Crave I think is specifically a Canadian one, which I do have a subscription to. And I do have the more expensive subscription, but I don't think that actually includes other and it shows that it only has 2 seasons on Crave. Yeah, it's only got 2 seasons, and it shows it in like French. So I don't know. But yeah, if the third season just aired, maybe it is on Crave and I have to just wait for them to drop it on there. I would love that. But ultimately, that means that there's more like Chucky content in existence. The fact that there's 3 seasons of a TV series, and like Chucky has less films by like a couple, by like 2 or 3, but 3 entire seasons, and that the series just continues on from where the movies left off. So there's from Cult of Chucky into this series. And I'm going to talk more about that in my Chucky tier list. This one was super long. My Chucky tier list is going to be a lot shorter. But we're going to talk about some interesting details of the Chucky franchise and why you should watch the films you haven't seen and the series. Because it's pretty cool. They do some really creative stuff. And yeah. But for now, I'm going to say Freddy's better. A little bit.